this time I'm not gonna, I just wanna say one thing, because a lot of people have a fear of voting. When the voting machines first came into Georgia, Sam Davis and I went around to a lot of black churches and everything. People were afraid because they could not operate a voting machine, you know what I mean? It's just like using a credit card now with a chip, just stick it in there, you know, and it will tell you, it will guide you all the way through. And then one other thing I'm gonna say about voting, and I'm gonna turn it over, you won't hear my voice anymore, but it's very important. A lot of people say, I told a lot of people I voted Republican. They say, you voted Republican? Yeah, I voted Republican. You can vote. That's a freedom you have. You know, you have that choice. You can vote any way you want to vote. I like a Republican. What I did, I voted on a Republican. You know, you can vote Republican in this election. If you want to go back and vote Democrat in the general election, you can. See, a lot of people don't know that. They say, well, I'm a Democrat. I'm a lifelong Democrat. That's fine, well and good. But you can vote both ways. A lot of people don't know that. That's just one little tip I need to put out to you, and you can explain it to other people. They have the opportunity to vote any which way they want to. And this time, you know what I mean? Hey, I like, there's a lot of Republicans I like, you know what I mean? Hey, I cast my vote, you know what I mean? But if I want to go Democratic in the general election, I'm going to go Democrat. That's the choice you have. But let people know that they do have a choice. Without further ado, we have the NAACP here in Bryant County, and I'm sort of connected with it two ways. My minister is Francis Johnson. I don't know if any of you have heard of him. He's president of the state NAACP, you know. And then we go to church sometime on Sunday, and we hear the word of God. And then sometime, Reverend, we hear a little politics, you know what I mean? But I like to end it on the word, you know what I mean? But, you know, the church and NAACP go way, way back because, you know, it brought us from a long, long way. Without further ado, I want to introduce Reverend Boyd. He'll tell you all about himself and a little bit more about the NAACP. He's our Bryant County president of Bryant County president. He's the president of Bryant County NAACP. Okay? Thank you. All right.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, to the mayor, we thank you. To Mayor Pro Tem, we thank you. And to all of our candidates, we thank you for being here on this evening. As Mayor Pro Tem Miller said, I am Daniel Boyd. I serve as the Bryant County branch president of the NAACP here, and we are reestablishing the branch here as of May of 2016. So we are here to humbly serve in this capacity, and we are certainly grateful for all of you for being here today. A part of this vision of the NAACP is, as Mayor Pro Tem Miller stated, it goes back a long way. And one of the things that we would like to continue to do is to continue to bridge the gap in our local communities. And so the purpose of this particular forum is to educate those that do not know who the candidates are. And as I heard the word apathy, there has been an apathy, not only, I'm gonna say this, not only in Pembroke, but there's also been an apathy amongst African Americans in Richmond Hill as well.
Yes, sir.
And so with that being said, we need to have forums like this so that we can make sure the entire county, all the people in the county can get properly the information from each candidate so that they can make an educated decision at the polls. So I'm not going to take more of your time. I'm just glad to be here, glad to be a part to facilitate this. I'm going to ask for a minute. I'm going to ask our NAACP members to stand. If you're a member of the NAACP here, can we salute them for a moment? Thank you. Thank you. The vision, again, as I said, part of this vision, again, tonight, is to allow the candidates to talk about their agenda, their agenda for you kind of touched it already, but we want to give you an opportunity to talk about it, but also we want to give you, the citizens, an opportunity to ask questions in reference to the positions that are being up for office. I don't know about you, but I think it's important that this forum takes place tonight so you can ask questions. And like I tell our parishioners at our church in Emmanuel, that there's no such thing as a dumb question. Is that right? If you want to know, the people are here tonight for you to know, and you can ask those questions. And so what I would like to do, I do have a couple of questions, if I can do that. I don't have, again, let me be specific, as the NAACP president, I do not endorse any candidate, but it is my responsibility to make sure that you have the information presented before you, so that you can also make the best decision that's in your heart. And so, without further ado, I do have a question, and this is for the Solicitor General position. And the question that I have is, how are we going to, as you know, there has been recent events that have happened in our country in reference to law enforcement and our community. The question is, how can we continue to bridge the gap between the law enforcement and the citizens, the African American citizens in Bryan County? And I'm preface that because on last week we had a forum at our church where the Richmond Hill Police Department came to our church, and there were some questions that were raised about the relationship between African Americans and police force. So if you can just touch on those, I'll give both of you opportunity to speak on that, and if anyone has any questions, we can go from there.
Ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Well, I kind of have a unique perspective on this because I was a police officer. And when I was in the police department, I was a training officer. When young officers came through the department, they had to spend 1 week with me before they could go back to the academy and graduate. One of the first things I told every person that walked into the car with me was, you are a peace officer first, not a police officer first. And I think that's something that's been lost with police departments, is that their job is first and foremost to keep the peace. Okay. Now, one of the ways that I taught my trainees to do that was, you must know your neighborhood as a police officer. You must get out of the car. One of the worst things that has happened to police departments across the country throughout the years is they've moved into cars with computers and radios, and everything in that car is right there for them. So they get stuck in that car. It's a bubble. They don't roll down the window. They don't get out. They don't go walk up and say hello to people. Now, in reverse, that has also happened with communities. Community members don't get up and they don't feel comfortable walking up and talking to the police officer. Not because you have a problem, just to say hello, just to get to know the police officers. Now, what happens when you get to know people? They become people. And that's part of the problem. One of the first posts I ever worked, I was a white officer in a black neighborhood. My partner was a black officer in a white neighborhood. And something very strange happened because me and him were partners. We got along with everybody. People got to know me as a person in my neighborhood. People got to know him as a person in his neighborhood. And then we crossed over our neighborhoods and introduced each other to our other neighborhoods. Now, I can't fix the problems that we're having right now. No one person can. But what needs to start happening is people have to start looking at people as people. Police officers are people. People in the community are people. Now, my position, how can I help? I can look to a police officer and tell him, look, I did your job. This case is not ready to go to court. This case should not be prosecuted. I can also look at a citizen in the eye and say, this case should be prosecuted. You know, I can explain to them why or why not things were done in a certain way and why this should happen. But I think the biggest message is it does need to be peace officers first, not police officers. Thank you.
My daddy is a retired police officer. He served for about 30 years. I graduated from Clemson University. At one point, I thought I was going to follow in his footsteps. I took the test from Massachusetts. We had a civil service system. I took the test, I did very well, called them for my interviews, and decided I wanted to go to law school. But, you know, part that I think to bridge the gap is the problem is there's a gap there in the first place. Touched on a little bit about Dawn Says. There is a gap between the police department and the community. You know, I don't have all the answers. I know, you know, other states, they have civil service systems where to be a police officer, you gotta live in the town. If you don't have a connection to your community, it's hard for that community to respect you. And I think that, you know, for the police officers, they just need to be a part of it. They don't need to be sitting in the car, as Dawn said on the computers. They don't need to be sitting in the back room playing on their phones when they're doing an event. You know, it means a lot if there's a police officer going to the basketball game, going to the football game. You talk to some of the old sheriff's deputies in Bryan County and around this area. You know, they used to go to the football games when they traveled. They'd be there anytime there's a high school dance. You know, now that you only have a police officer or a fireman there if you're having to do the fire code. But the police officer needs to be there, he needs to be part of the community, and the people need to know the police officer. It's just, that's where it starts. The more of a gap that you create between the police officer and the community, the more likely you're going to see what you have in the news. I'll just give you an example. The town where my father was the police officer, they were very big on that. They had you know, substations and the police officers, rather than being in their, you know, in the main station, they were around. They were out in the community. They were in the different neighborhoods. It might just be one police officer at a time. The police officer might be on the bike, but when you're out there and you're not in your parole car and you're not there on your cell phone, you have to talk to people, and I think that's where it starts. You know, as far as my position is concerned, you know, when I get the case as a Solicitor General, you know, the stop's already been made, the officer's already written the ticket, and the officer's looking at me to prosecute. What I've seen work in other jurisdictions is, you know, sometimes it helps if the officer talks to the person. You know, sometimes the person is upset. You know, I'm not talking about a serious offense, but, you know, the officer has to deal with the person, and the person has to deal with the officer, and they can talk about it, and that resolves the case. I think people will be a lot nicer to each other.
Thank you both for those answers to those questions. This next question I have is for the school board candidates. And this question